Alright, this is going to be another self-archive video on how to make a beginner to intermediate level glitch effect. Now this composition is going to be at 60 frames a second, which is going to be an important note. So first thing I'm going to do is drop in the screenshot that I want to use, and then drop that into my project. Now this is facing the opposite direction that I want, so I'm going to right click, transform, flip horizontal. Now it's facing the way that I want. Now to go to Effects, Channel, Set Channels, which is going to give me my RGB color channels. Now that I have those, I'm going to click on my timeline piece, Control C, then Control V, Control V. That way I get 3 sets. Now I'm going to actually divide these up into each color. So I'm going to right click on the top one and name that red, rename the middle one green, rename the bottom one blue. Now you can probably guess what I'm going to do. Now for my top one, I'm going to turn off the colors green and blue for red. Green, I'm going to turn off red and blue. And blue, I'm going to turn off red and green. Now I'm going to select my top 2 layers, and on mode, I'm going to set them to screen. Now screen is going to make it to where it looks to the layer below it for colors that are missing and kind of combine them into making a complete image. And since we divided each layer into a separate color channel, when you screen through all of them from top to bottom, it gives you a full image. Now, if this isn't here for you, right click on the little bar here, go to columns, and then modes is right here. That'll give you your little modes thing so you can set it to screen. Now on my top layer here, I'm gonna go down to transform, and I'm going to actually scooch this over a little bit. I usually scooch it a little left and right to figure out which direction is what number. So I want it to go left, and left looks like it's down. So I'm going to Control Z to put it back to what it was, and then change that number, because I want it to be about 100 pixels. Change that 9 to an 8. I'm just going to scooch it over. So now for my middle layer, down, transform, position. I want this to be the other direction, 100 pixels. Change that 9 to a 10, 1060. And then that scooches it over. Now, I do think doing this makes it a little bit bright. So on the top 2 layers, I like to set the opacity to 50%. Which, I don't know, I just like a darker effect, but that's just me. You do whatever you want. And right here, you basically have the most basic of glitch effects right here, the RGB effect. But I want to do a bit more. So over on effects, I'm going to go type in warp. And I want wave warp. I'm going to put that on, doesn't matter which layer. And I'm going to turn off the other layers I did not put it on. That way I just see what I want. Now immediately it's going to look pretty awful. First of all, it's going up and down. I want a left to right effect. So on direction for that effect, I'm going to set that to 0, which is going to make it left to right. And I'm going to change the wave type to noise. This gives it a bit of a staticky effect, but I want the staticky effect to be just so large that it gives it the glitch effect. So wave length is 40, but I need that to be set to something insane. So I'm going to set that all the way to like 3000, which gives you much larger little chunks here. Wave height is going to actually be the amount that it goes up and down, and I like it somewhere around there. Looks pretty good. I'm going to go with like 15. And that's pretty good for what I want. And wave speed, because it's noise and it's normally very tiny, but I made it so large. At speed 1, if I play this, it's crazy fast. So I'm going to actually set that speed. You can also just turn this off if you want. I'm going to set it to 0.01. That's very, very tiny. Then if I play it, now it just has a bit of a slow effect as it goes up. Now I want it to be a little bit different, so I'm going to grab wave warp again and put another layer on it. And I'm not really going to change anything except change the wave type to noise. Now it's a little too grainy, so wave height I'm actually going to set to 5. So it just gives it a little bit of fuzz on each of the edges of the glitch. Now that I have that, I'm going to select wave warp 2 and wave warp 1, Control C, go to my other layers, like red, click into the panel here for effects, Control V, go to my last layer, click into the effects, Control V. Turn on the layers, and then if I scroll back to the beginning, that's not too bad. I want a little bit more movement now, so I'm going to Alt click on position. That's going to give you this little console command menu like in a video game. I'm going to type in wiggle, bracket, and I want it to be relatively slow, so I'm going to do 2, comma, 15. Turn off the other layers. And maybe a little much. Let me turn that to maybe 10. Yeah, that's okay. So I'm going to click on it, Control C, go to my other layers, Alt, position, Control V, go to my blue, transform, Alt, position, Control V. So now all the layers have the glitch effect and a little bit of shaking to them. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now the last thing I can think to do would be to shrink all these down. Click off of your layers, don't have any layers selected. Click on your shape tool, and then you can just make a couple shapes. Go crazy with it. So I'm going to start off with something like that. Zoom in all the way down to the frame. Now remember, I'm at 60 frames a second, so I'm going to go forward 6 frames. Control Shift D, which is going to split the layer and make it onto another layer. I'm going to delete that part, just leave the beginning. Now I'm going to do that again. Do one here, maybe like a half one there, another one here. I'm going to shrink that down to where this one ends. Scooch forward another 6 frames. Control Shift D, delete. Then again. Shrink that down. Scooch forward 6 frames. Control Shift D, delete. Shrink it down. Go forward 6 frames. Control Shift D. Delete. Shrink that down. Go forward 6 frames. Control Shift D. Delete. And shrink all these down. Normally I would go a little further with this, I would do a few more, but this is just kind of an example, so I'm not going to spend ages doing this. Select all my layers, Control D, which duplicates them, drag them to the top, scooch them over to where the other one ends, select them all, Control D to duplicate again, scooch them to the top, and then scooch them over to where that one ends, and select them all, Control D, scooch them to the top, and then scooch them over to where that one ends. Alright, now select them all. That gives me 4 seconds. Yeah, 4 seconds is enough. Whatever length you do for this is going to be the length of the effect. So after 4 seconds, it'll stop having these panels here. So now I'm going to select all those shapes we just made. Go to Layer, Pre-compose. Doesn't matter what you call it. I'll just call it 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's going to put it into there. Now I'm going to turn it off so the red stuff goes away, which is an abomination. Go to make another layer, right click, new adjustment layer. Now on your adjustment layer, you're going to go to effects, distort, displacement map. And then on displacement map layer, you're going to actually select what you just made, which we just labeled 1, 2, 3. Now here you can adjust the actual displacement of the different spots that you created. So like up and down, yada yada. I like to have this one set to like, this is up and down 50, and then this one to be negative 150. Now if I play this back, you'll see how it gets all crazy. And that's about it. But like I said, after 4 seconds, it kind of cuts off. So if it goes past that, it stops. Whatever length you made that pre-composition. But yeah, there you go. That's about it.